I'm going to be talking to Dr. Josipa Petrunic, who is the president and CEO of CUTRIC. It's a Canadian Urban Transit Research and Innovation Consortium about a new report, Renewable Natural Gas as a Complementary Solution to Decarbonization. So welcome to the interview, Josipa.
Thanks so much, Markham. Thanks for having me.
Well, always happy to talk to you because there's so much going on in transit these days. And so why don't we start with just an overview of your study, please?
Sure. So this is a new study we've done with regards to renewable natural gas to find out if it should be considered one of the fuels in the fight against climate change for zero emissions transit. And most folks are focused on battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell, and we are too. But what we really wanted to find out was if renewable natural gas has a place to play. So the study basically looked at the emissions factors associated with compressed natural gas buses that already exist if you put renewable natural gas into their pipeline, and whether that would actually save a lot of emissions. And it turns out it really does. It's cost effective and it can be net zero or even sub-zero carbon emissions. So it's a winner. And it's just that it's not a fuel that historically people have looked at, including at government, as part of the zero emissions solution package.
Now, about 6 months ago, I interviewed Fortis BC because they were going to be using biogas, which I assume is the same as renewable natural gas. And that gas was produced in landfills and other places, and so BC would seem like a good candidate where they already have compressed natural gas to switch it over to biogas, very limited cost to the transit agency.
Yeah, so I mean, right now across Canada, there aren't that many transit agencies that have CNG buses, but there are a few. It was much more popular in the United States, in California in particular. Pretty much everybody went to natural gas in the 2000s, largely because it was seen to be cleaner than diesel if it was burned properly, and because it was a lot cheaper. If you remember those days when it was just super, super cheap natural gas. In Canada, TransLink made that move. So out in Vancouver, they've got compressed natural gas buses. Calgary made the move to install natural gas fuel tank as well as buy the buses. Hamilton has natural gas buses. And then there's a handful of natural gas buses around the rest of the country, but not too much outside of that. So that's really where the industry stalled a little bit in the 2010s when the price started to inch back up of natural gas. And at that point, everybody started to shift attention to battery and hydrogen. So having said that, the big story here is for those agencies that have compressed natural gas buses, they're relatively young. What do they do with them? Because the move is away from compressed natural gas as a fossil fuel. And the solution here very obviously is to start integrating biogas and what we call renewable natural gases. And for those folks who aren't really familiar with it, I mean, we like to say it's powered by poop, and that is the truth of the matter. It can come from manure, like animal manure. It can come from food waste and generally landfill gas. And the thing about it is this stuff is emitting methane, whether we like it or not. Like, we're never going to stop excreting material as animals ourselves, or, animals on farms. So there's always going to be manure. There's always going to be gas coming off landfills that are decomposing, and that's going right into the atmosphere. And that stuff is methane, and it's very polluting. So if we capture that stuff and we then pipe it into the natural gas pipeline and we then combust that stuff, it converts from methane into carbon dioxide. And that's a lot cleaner than methane right into the atmosphere. So powered by poop, a few agencies across Canada can really move towards zero emissions.
Now, for the three agencies that are using compressed natural gas, do they see biogas as a transition, like a bridge to hydrogen or electric?
That was part of the dialogue, and part of our report was really looking at, is it a transition fuel or is it a permanent solution? If you're Fortis BC or Fortis Alberta or Enbridge, you see it as a permanent solution because there will always be renewable natural gas out there. There will always be poop, right? Like, that's the truth of it. And it will always be emitting methane into the atmosphere. So it's a permanent solution. And there's a lot of supply now compared to years ago where there weren't a lot of digesters and so on to capture this stuff. So the industry sees it as a permanent solution. Transit agencies are in a bit of a different situation. These buses that are compressed natural gas buses, they are cheaper than electric or hydrogen fuel cell buses, and they are more readily available because there's a larger supply chain and they're standard manufactured products. So they're available, but transit agencies right now can't access funding for them. So the federal government Zero Emissions Transit Fund is really focused on battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell buses. And so if you're a transit agency and you're looking for a very cheap way to transition your fleet and get to zero emissions, right now, nobody is giving you money to buy compressed natural gas buses, but they are giving you a lot of money for battery and fuel cell buses. So the industry sees it as a permanent solution because it's a permanent fuel supply chain, but the transit industry and government right now doesn't see it as a permanent solution from the funding side. When you take a look at Calgary and TransLink and Hamilton, there's no indication that they're going to decommission their buses anytime soon. These things work well. They're relatively reasonable from a maintenance perspective. And now there's more RNG supply, so the net zero emissions future is realistic for them. The challenge transit is having is convincing others to buy these vehicles. And so if you're a manufacturer of these buses, like New Flyer, for example, it's hard to predict if anybody's going to be buying these in the future because government isn't subsidizing it, but the industry has all of this fuel and it's a reasonably good solution for net zero emissions. So I guess we're in a bit of a TBD situation right now. And part of our report's goal is to try to explain that maybe there should be some subsidization of this industry because it does cause zero emissions in some areas where battery electrification, hydrogen fuel cell may still be 10 years away.
Now, you talk to government all the time, or governments. Is there any interest on government's part to be subsidizing biogas buses?
No. So therein lies the challenge. So federally, at least, the Infrastructure Canada Fund is very clear, and Infrastructure Canada is very clear. They don't consider these part of the zero emission solution. Having said that, I don't think the science was out there. Everybody was operating in a zone of not knowing. And we had the same discussion around battery electrification for the last 10 years. People didn't think it was zero emissions because the coal coal was on the grid in some jurisdictions until you do the science and you see exactly what the emission savings are grid by grid, province by province. Oh, then it's a solution. So I think we're in the same place with RNG right now. Now that we know where the supply is, we know where the digesters are, we know how much it costs and what it looks like to get that supply to the users. Now there's more science in front of government. So we're going to be starting in 2023 working with the federal government to say, okay, battery and hydrogen fuel cell are clearly critical solutions here, but there is space for RNG and there should be some consideration given the science isn't lying here. There are serious emissions reductions.
Great. Well, Josipa, as always, thank you for your insights.
Thanks so much, Markham.